And Anthony Scott Pyatt back here on the Cage Rage podcast, and we're looking at odds for this weekend's boxing. We've got a big one at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, the return of Manny Pacquiao, a 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao returning to face Keith Thurman, and it's got a nice card attached to it. ASP making picks on 5 of the fights from the MGM Grand. ASP, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. I am excited about this card for sure, Miguel. I think it's one of the better cards we've had all year. Maybe not the single biggest fight, but as far as a card with 5, 6, 7 fights on the undercard, pretty excited about this one.
Let's get right into it. We got it's heavy on welterweights, and we'll start off in the welterweight division. We got Omar Figueroa Jr. He's 28-0-1 with 19 KOs. He's taking on veteran Yordenis Ugas. Ugas out of Cuba with a 23-4 record, 11 KOs, but don't let that fool you. Ugas is a dog, and I don't mean like a dog like Anthony means. I mean like a dog, like a pit bull that you get in the ring there. And Yordenis is paying back at -550. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, the things that are going good for Omar Figueroa Jr. are sort of the unknown factor. His last fight was a very dominant win against John Molina Jr. You and I have some affection for John Molina, but we know he's had his issues and his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. So it's not a huge feather in his cap for Omar to beat John Molina, but it does show that he can compete with some world-class talent. Moving on to Yordenis Ugas. His last fight, split decision loss to Shawn Porter. And he had not lost before that since 2014. So I think that's interesting. Back in 2014, he did have back-to-back losses to Emanuel Robles, who is now only 17-6-1, and Amir Imam. He then took 2 years and 3 months off, almost retired type of thing. He comes back in late 2016. Now a 33-year-old Ugas has shown weakness after a loss before. Can he match the rising Figueroa Jr.? I mean, he's coming off of a loss. A loss seems to really mentally affect Ugas. As I say, Emanuel Robles, Amir Imam, 2 in a row. Then he takes almost 2.5 years off to recover. So I do predict Ugas by decision. But because of these variables, because of the mental strength that I question, DOGWATCH Figueroa Jr. at a +400. I think that's a good watch. Again, not a dog pick. I'm not picking him to win, but I think that there's some variables here that makes that +400, be nice to turn your 100 into 500. If you got an extra 100 to spare on this one, might take a look at Omar Figueroa Jr. for the DOGWATCH. Going to be a great fight.
I agree. I don't think I've got a problem with the pick. Figueroa Jr. Still an O on his record with the 28-0. So he's avoided what Ugas has already seen. Ugas favored. The thing about Ugas and his comeback after the 2-year-plus layoff is he was renewed, and that all came under the PBC flag. So he was taking some of those fights on short notice. And if you notice, somewhere on there, and I'm not looking at his record right now, but I'm pretty sure that he took out a couple of undefeated up-and-comers that he was walking into those fights as an underdog as. So he did do some hard work to get to his position. The split decision loss to Porter, a lot of people think he won that fight.
That's right.
And, that was his shot at a world title. Now here, he needs to do this fight, if that dream is ever going to come true. If he fails in this fight, then he's probably going to take a step back. But he can overcome the split decision loss to Porter in his last outing with a win here and still stay at the top of the list for dangerous welterweights.
That's right.
As we move on here, we got more welterweight action. We got Sergey Lipinets. He's moved here to take on John Molina Jr. Lipinets, a former world champion. I believe he took a loss to Mikey Garcia, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, he did take it. That was the loss to Mikey Garcia.
That's his only loss.
But Lipinets, besides that 15-0, Lipinets aggressive, a little bit of a headhunter. At welterweight, he's moved up in weight. He had the early part of his career came in lower weight classes, and that's a situation there where we're going to see how how he carries the extra weight, and so it may suit him very well. Here against John Molina Jr., he's not expected to be challenged that much. Molina Jr., 30-8, and like we said, he's been through the mill, and he was recently knocked out, and he's also had a couple of those types of wars and stuff, and to be honest with you, there are times where people in the business have questioned whether he's punch drunk or not. He's a little bit of an interesting character, so sometimes people get confused, and maybe he does some of that, but yeah, he's been through some wars here, and Lipinets is not a show you mercy kind of fighter. How do you see this one?
Yeah, absolutely right. John Molina Jr., we just mentioned. Omar Figueroa just beat him in his last fight. So again, that connectedness, if you look at our other card from the zone that we're covering this weekend, there was a lot of connectedness. So this one as well, Omar Figueroa Jr. had fought John Molina. John Molina now, again, his last fight, unanimous decision loss. He's also fought Crawford and lost. And he also lost 3 in a row. Now, they were good fighters. Lucas Matthysse, Humberto Soto, Adrian Broner. I kind of chuckle when I call Broner a good fighter. He's a good fighter. He's not a great fighter like he thinks he is. Let's put it that way. But good enough to handle John Molina Jr., which is, essentially a journeyman or a gatekeeper now type of role. Sergey Lipinets, he did lose to Mikey Garcia. We called him as, I believe he was an underdog against Lamont Peterson a month ago or so. And we did call that one. March 24th is when it was, as a matter of fact. Peterson retiring after the fight, actually in the ring retirement. So interesting there. I think Sergey's got the strength and is going to do just fine in this fight against John Molina. I predict Lipinets knockout in the 8th round. No bets on this one. Lipinets 8th round knockout.
And moving down the card, we got 10-round heavyweight action, and we've talked about Efe Ajagba before. Ajagba 10-0 with 9 KOs. If I'm not mistaken, that one fighter that he didn't KO left the ring before the fight, walked out. So Ajagba actually had a highlight reel. His biggest highlight reel was actually one day that he got in the ring and didn't even fight.
That's right.
He's facing a guy with a similar record, and Ali Aaron Demirizin, 11-0 with 10 knockouts. Ajagba still coming in a minus 1,800 favorite. Demirizin paying back at plus 880. So some people might bite at that. What do you think? What do you advise?
Yeah, this is a tough one right here. Look, I'm a fan of Efe Ajagba. As mentioned, the only fight, not a KO, disqualified. His opponent walked out of the ring. Interestingly enough, Ali Aaron Demirizin, 11-0, 10 knockouts. He has the asterisks as well. Only fight, not a KO for him. The opponent got disqualified. It wasn't in the same fashion walking out of the ring. I think they went 2 rounds before he got disqualified. So the point is 11-0, 10 knockouts, 10-0, 9 knockouts. They have all knockouts except for the disqualification. So expect big shots to be thrown by both boxers in this. With that fact, and I'm an FA fan and I'm going with him, at a plus 880, you might want to take a look at that. I'm not officially calling a dog watch on this one because I do think Ajagba is just too good. But look, he's facing a guy that's undefeated and that's knocked out everybody that's ever messed with him. So I wouldn't fault a guy that had an extra $100 to try and win that $880. I wouldn't laugh at you for betting this one, but I'm not officially advocating it. So do what you will with that information. Ajagba knockout in the 5th round.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, obviously the Ajagba bandwagon is going to be something that will be interesting to see if it picks up steam here in the next couple of years, over the course of the next 18 months as he, continues to fight and continues to be in the spotlight. Moving up, we got world title action, the IBF title at 168 pounds. Champion Caleb Plant 18-0. Minus 1,700 favorite as he takes on 21-0 Mike Lee. Mike Lee, 11 knockouts. When you look at Mike Lee, early part of his career was brought along under the top-ranked flag, and he's maintained an undefeated record. But the original gimmick around Mike Lee is that he's from Notre Dame, and he was a Notre Dame football player. And he was a football player crossing over early in his career and stuff. Now, obviously, to get to 21-0 in a world title fight, Mike Lee is stuck with it. But it's going to be hard for you to shake that stigma of being a football player first when you're facing a guy like Caleb Plant, who's, a lifer kind of thing.
That's right. You look at Mike Lee, and part of the reason he's got that 21-0 record with 11 KOs, not, just over 50%, 52%, I guess. But the quality of his opponents have been suspect. So that 52% knockout rate isn't even as impressive as it may sound at first. When you see the lower half of his matchups is where he had the KOs. In other words, the guys that had only 3 or 4 fights, or the guys that were 10-30, those type of guys, those are the guys he knocked out. When he got up into people with winning records and with a little bit more ring experience, he hasn't been able to knock them out. So yeah, he's knocked out about 50%, but they were the rookie 50%, if you will, not the guys that were even had a little bit of experience. So his record's maybe not quite as impressive as it might seem. You look at Caleb Plant, 18-0 with 10 KOs, not quite as good of a record on paper. But Plant was one of our dog picks when he beat Jose Uzcategui, and he did not bite him. He beat him rather than bite him. But I love Caleb Plant. I've liked the guy for several fights, been following his career. And as I say, one of our first 12 in a row dog picks that didn't lose for us. We're very happy. Caleb was one of those. So I've got to stick with Caleb. He's come through for us before on this show. I will say by decision, though, and not knockout. So Plant by decision, no bets on this one. Just kind of wanted to throw this one out there, as Plant sort of is a guy that I really enjoy. Both his fighting style and his spirit, and how he approaches the game with a lot of respect. He's a fine young man, you might say. I'm going to stick with Caleb Plant. And
an additional shout out to Caleb. He underwent a personal tragedy. His mother was killed in some type of street crime type of incident earlier this year, and it's something where Caleb has dedicated fights and things to her in the past and things. So that will also be on his mind, and also should serve as a motivating factor. Now, that leaves us
absolutely
with the main event of the evening. The main event of the evening is what everybody's talking about, right? You got Manny Pacquiao, at 40, but coming off of good performances where he's looked, above average, renewed, rejuvenated, people using those types of words. And he's facing one-time Thurman, Keith Thurman, still 29-0, a former world champion where, the layoff caused him to give up some belts here. And you're in a situation where, Thurman, off for a couple years, his bounce-back fight against Josecito Lopez, he didn't look terrific. But, if it was just that, a bounce-back fight, now we get back to the old Thurman, I mean, that's the whole question to it because, are we going to get the Thurman in his prime that beat Shawn Porter, that beat Danny Garcia, or are we going to get the Thurman that fought Josecito Lopez back in January? And Pacquiao, I think you know what you're going to get. One interesting asterisk to this fight, and keep in mind that when they declare the winner on Saturday, you get your money if you bet on it. And, we'll see if anybody fails a drug test afterwards. And the bottom line is that neither fighter signed up for the Veda testing. Veda isn't perfect, but what do you get under Veda when you're doing lesser testing than Veda? Who knows? It's a free-for-all. But somebody could, of course, still test positive. But I expect Pacquiao to be in very good shape.
Yeah, I do too. Even though, he's like the ageless wonder at this point. You've seen his career, think he's over. If you look at his last 3 fights, Jeff Horn, surprisingly, it was before I joined the podcast here, but I was able to get money in on Jeff Horn, who was a 50-1 underdog against Pacquiao. Now, having said that, they were fighting in Australia with Australian judges and an Australian Jeff Horn against Pacquiao. They were fighting in the heat. There was travel involved. There was the time of day. There were some things that led me to go, you know, Jeff Horn maybe should be a 10-1, a 20-1, but not a 50-1. So at that 50-1, I had to take it. And then, you know, they came through for me. I say they because Jeff Horn and the judges came through for me on that fight is what happened. Let's be honest. But it was a hell of a payday. And I ate well on that, let's say. So, but if he fights like his last two fights, Jeff Horn was 3 fights. If he fights like his last two, he ought to win rather easily over Thurman. If he fights like he did against Lucas Matthysse, I think Matthysse would give Thurman all sorts of trouble. And Matthysse really didn't bother Pacquiao, and he handled him quite well. A very impressive win. And then Adrian Broner. We've mentioned him once already in this. Probably shouldn't pick on the brother, but I really don't care for his style and his sort of bombastic, rude playboy sort of, you know. I've never seen anyone celebrate a loss like it was a win like Broner can. So maybe that's something to be proud of. I don't.
I'm gonna sum it up for you here. The Adrian Broner story, his company and his promotions and stuff. He talks about billions, right? Now about billions implies, okay, you're going to be, you know, exponentially bigger than Mayweather, right? So, you know, how is he doing on track to this? You know, about billions, this fortune he expects to make. Well, you know, he gets arrested all the time, but the incident I point to is he was arrested for making $14,000 worth of bets in a bowling alley. And I mean, you know, I don't make $14,000 bets because I can't, but $14,000 at the end of the day is a good used car, right? It's not about billions. And right. The reason he was arrested is because after losing the $14K, he couldn't possibly, deal with the loss of it. So he stayed behind and assaulted the guy and took his money back after the bowling extravaganza that they went through that day. So it just all sounds like B-class stuff. You know, I don't know if Mayweather would be caught dead in a bowling alley, and if he is in a bowling alley, he'd probably be carrying more than $14K with him. So. Right. You know, yeah. So yeah, I'm not impressed by Broner either, and it is hard to judge how you know, you rate Pacquiao on that, but Pacquiao dictated the pace, and that's not hard to do with Broner, and you know that starts the fight from there. Broner kind of fighting the wrong style there. You know, interestingly, in that fight, everybody in the building knew Pacquiao won, except for Broner. Broner thought he'd done enough to win the fight. It's very, very hard to do that. I don't think Thurman will be that confused, especially during the fight, but we'll see. I think Thurman definitely does have a shot right now. He's coming in. It looks like a plus 130 to Pacquiao's minus 150. Thurman's going to be tall. He's going to be long, and you know, if he can work those things to his advantage, you know, and fight that type of fight, the fight that he fought, for example, against Shawn Porter. The Shawn Porter fight is a very telling fight because in many ways you could break down at the essential, Pacquiao and Broner are very similar. They're going to come forward. You know, they're going to come throwing, they're going to throw punches. And, you know, he managed his way through that fight and won it. And in my opinion, he did win that fight. So, you know, if he's able to be at the top of his game, he is a threat to Pacquiao, and people are missing out on that. You know, it's been almost 3 years, you know, now since we've seen Thurman at the top of his game. And, you know, people forget. And I think that's one of the things that's happening here. You know, this should be probably closer to a pick'em fight.
I think so, too. And, you know, I mean, he did beat Shawn Porter in that unanimous decision. Even, you know, Danny Garcia was a split decision for what it's worth. So he didn't dominate all his opponents. Split decision against Danny. Danny's a good fighter. But Pacquiao has this experience, and he should be able to use his footwork, his angles, and even his speed to give Thurman, some sort of different looks throughout the match. But that said, hey, look, if Thurman gets inside Pac-Man's defenses and can hurt him, then, hey, one time Thurman always has that body puncher's chance. Those long arms reaching around, hitting Pacquiao on the ribs. This should be exciting. It's a difficult fight to call. If you like Thurman, he's not a bad bet at plus 130. But I would want, personally, plus 175 or more before I would recommend Thurman as a dog watch. But at the time that these odds came in, and at this time of this recording, we've got Thurman at a plus 130. Hey, if you can find him for plus 175, maybe some money comes in on Pacquiao. At a negative 150, money could still come in on Pacquiao. If that 130 goes up to 175, then I'm going to suggest betting it with Thurman as a dog watch. I think he is live in this fight, and I do agree with that. Maybe not live enough to bet at plus 130, but plus 175, get it in. I predict Pacquiao by decision, but this is just damn near a coin toss.
Hey, you see the over-under right now? The over-under said 11.5. The over-under, if you're somehow on the under, which at 11.5 is interesting. That's a plus 315, so it's expected to go the distance. That's paying minus 380.
That's right.
Would you bite on that under?
Well, since I have Pacquiao by decision, I guess the answer is no, right?
Okay.
But sometimes I go against my own calls because the plus 315 is such a good, draw. So, yeah, I don't think so. I just don't think – look, I don't think Pacquiao is going to knock Thurman out, right? So then is Thurman going to win as the underdog? Then he has to knock – so to pick the under, I'm picking the underdog by default because I don't think Pacquiao can do it. So I'd be picking an underdog plus the under to realistically win that under. So I don't feel comfortable putting money on it even at 315 because I don't think Pacquiao's going to knock. So normally when you pick the over or the under, you're picking either fighter. It doesn't matter if any of them finish it before 11.5. But in this case, I really don't see Pacquiao finishing Thurman. Do you see that as an option? So now instead of having two guys we're only betting on one, and he's the underdog. So that steers me away from it. What are your thoughts on that, Miguel?
No, I'm interested in your advice because you could make an argument for both sides, right? Because the bottom line is both guys have a good number of knockouts between them, and anything can happen. And 11.5 gives you, it's not 9.5, so it gives you the entire fight basically, except for the last minute and a half.
Right.
So it's something that some people may want to look at. At any rate, those are the odds, and the thing for the MGM Grand July 20th, the odds and the picks rather. For the MGM Grand July 20th, we got Manny Pacquiao and Keith Thurman in the main event. ASP, our boxing gurus, made picks on 5 of the fights for this Saturday. So take a look, hit like and subscribe. You can check our video for picks for London's fights from the afternoon this Saturday. They've got a triage of heavyweight fights over in the O2 Arena. So I'm Miguel Dorati for the CRP. ASP, any final words?
Hey, I might be watching these fights at the AMC theaters. It's a pay-per-view fight, but they do show them at AMC. The one I've got, reclining leather seats and the bar built in right there. So we take a group up. Perhaps some of our other CRP analysts. Devin may meet us. I'm going to throw the word out to Amanda. So I'll throw that out there. The Zone has the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time other fight. This one's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, both on this Saturday. And I look forward to watching these with some pals, more than likely at the AMC. But, hey, tune in. Let us know what you think. Comment on these fights as they go. Tell us where you watched them and who you made money off of. All right?
And that's it. Here at the CRP, that's our picks and odds. Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman. Check your local books for odds in your neighborhood.